What's up everyone, it's Endymion, and recently, as you know, Microsoft released their newest first-party game in the form of Redfall. I'll be honest, when I first saw footage of this game, I thought the idea was novel at least until I realized it was being developed by Arcane of all people. Also, if I sound a bit weird, it's cause I'm recording in my basement, cause there's a heat wave outside and I don't want to die of a heat stroke. Anyway, Redfall has been unleashed upon the masses and it's getting absolutely destroyed in not just reviews but also fan reception, with many saying Redfall is one of the worst AAA releases in years. I've already made a video about how I think Xbox is Microsoft's greatest failure, and I stand by that video despite the flack I've gotten for it. Because unfortunately, almost every prediction and hot take I said there has come to pass, and honestly, I'm not happy that I was right. I genuinely want Xbox to be a contender to the likes of PlayStation and Nintendo, since stronger competition means that these companies must bring their A game in order to justify you spending money on them. But when it comes to Xbox in general, it seems like they're not just limping behind the competition, I would argue they're not even in the running anymore. Which is why Redfall is so bizarre to me on a conceptual level. Firstly, it's from Arcane, which is known for meticulously designed experiences that are known for replayability and depth. Dishonored, for example, was one of my favorite games when it came out. It was insanely replayable and had tons of unique ways to complete each mission. But at its core, it felt like an extremely polished stealth action game that rivaled the greats and in my opinion even surpassed some of them. Prey as well was a wholly unique experience that felt completely alien compared to other games on the market. The philosophical depths of its narrative were great, and the ability to transform into objects and use your ingenuity to explore were amazing. Redfall on paper makes no sense coming from the same developer, with it being an open-world first-person shooter with loot elements. Honestly, outside of Destiny 2, I think the majority of these looter shooters have failed miserably for the most part. And I can only speak for myself, but I am no longer interested in seeing new looter shooters anymore. Everything about Redfall doesn't make sense coming from Arcane, and it's even more damning the more you look into it with Microsoft's advertising and the constant shifting of goalposts with what's acceptable from them. One Twitter user even showed Redfall's laziness with this window in-game, which is just plugged on a roof with no care for believability. As if that wasn't bad enough, there's a tsunami of clips online of players showing Redfall having brain-dead AI, terrible textures, and even glass being unbreakable and showing no signs of bullet impact. As if that wasn't embarrassing enough, if you got the game physically, on the back it even says Redfall will run at 60 frames. Which is a lie since the game launched only supporting 30 frames and even then it struggles to work. And you could smell the blood in the air when Bethesda was forcing review sites to delete their reviews before the game's release. And it's never a good sign when a game's reviews go live mere minutes before it launches. The only logical reason for doing this would be so publishers can trick as many people as possible into buying the game before realizing how crap it really is. And after those reviews went live, it's clear why Bethesda was in full-blown damage control mode, with sites like Noisy Pixel saying, and I quote, "Redfall is an anomaly because a game with this good of a team behind it can't possibly be this bad, and yet it is. There are these drips of looter shooter, RPG, and multiplayer elements sprinkled throughout, but none of them work together, delivering a messy and almost incomprehensible experience. Still, gunplay and exploration stay consistently fun thanks to the satisfaction of taking down enemies and the level design. But the multiplayer campaign could provide bouts of fun comprised of laughing at the strange AI behavior or the fact that no one can find keys to a door." End quote. Noisy Pixel would end up giving Redfall a 4 out of 10, which is not good for your big shiny new AAA exclusive game. One review that really stuck out to me was from Engadget.com with their review titled, "Good Enough for Game Pass." Jesus Christ. Engadget's review is all kinds of damning, but let's read some highlights and I quote, "Redfall is not fit for public consumption. It may not give you salmonella, but Arcane Austin's vampire-infused world is unpolished, underpopulated, and littered with glitches. From the jump, there are signs the game would have benefited from another delay before launch day. That's not to say Redfall is a bad game filled with terrible ideas, but in its current form, it's difficult to see the brilliance among the bugs. Here's where things start to fall apart. Redfall's entire world feels dead, and not in the on-brand reanimated corpse type of way. There are long stretches of road and entire neighborhoods without enemies or points of interest, and groups of cultists and vampires are often incredibly easy to spot. Combine this with shockingly dumb enemy AI and an oppressive amount of aim assist, and most basic encounters end after a smattering of bullets and little tension. I played on an Xbox Series S and PC and experienced numerous bugs and crashes, particularly on the Xbox version. The game is limited to 30 frames at launch on both Series S and X and suffers immensely because of it, with heavy-handed motion blur barely smoothing out the judders. Playing with a gamepad on Xbox is especially jarring. Hefty aim assist mixes with a significant dead zone to create an unpleasant, weirdly imprecise shooting experience. I was able to tweak things to make it bearable, but basic gunplay in Redfall feels bad. And then there are the bugs. Prompts to talk to people or read notes often fail. Environments pop in with half-loaded textures. Frame rate drops result in slow motion animations. Sniper rifle scopes break completely. The game fully crashes. In 15 hours with Redfall, my game crashed 3 times. Right now, Redfall makes sense as an early access game. It's a mess, but it's still largely playable. Redfall's core loop is actually thrilling when all the mechanics line up correctly, but the details need attention. But in reality, Arcane and Xbox aren't pitching Redfall as an early access game. They're calling it a finished product, and they're charging $70 or at least 1 month of Game Pass set to automatically renew for the privilege of playing its glitchy, imprecise missions. If Xbox plans to use Game Pass as an early access hub, then the terms need to be clear. And if Xbox wants to release games that aren't ready for retail, then potential players deserve to know when they're spending $70 on potential and potential alone. End quote. I honestly think the review from Engadget says it all really. The fact Redfall is such a mess is shockingly on brand for Xbox and Game Pass as a service. Since you could buy Redfall at full price, although let's be real, why would you? The fact it's on Game Pass softens the blow for many since the price to play is cheaper. But this has been my problem with Game Pass since its conception. It's Microsoft's way of throwing as much garbage as possible at you in order to keep you subscribed. It's not really important if the titles available are worth the price, since that's not why they're available to begin with. Microsoft's approach to gaming is like Netflix's approach to streaming. Quality is not as important as sheer quantity of options. They just need to keep you engaged long enough for your subscription to renew to the next month. But my problem with not only Redfall but Microsoft's approach to gaming as a whole is that their vision for what gaming should be worries the hell out of me. When it comes to Sony and Nintendo, for the most part, they're known for releasing quality games at release that justify their price points. Of course, there are anomalies to this, like Forspoken for example, but remember that Forspoken was not made by Sony, they just bought a deal to have it released on PlayStation first. Anyway, for the most part, when it comes to first-party releases, Sony and Nintendo have it pretty sound that you're gonna be experiencing quality if you buy in. Why Microsoft's approach to gaming has me worried is that their huge push for Game Pass ignores the quality and I guess you could say artistic allure of games being art to the side, and instead replaces the medium of video games with quantity over quality. Why buy one really good game for $70 when you could subscribe to Game Pass for a couple of months for the same price and enjoy all of these games instead? And that's what worries me. People think things like Game Pass are good for gaming, but they're not. It's a system designed to diminish the quality of its content in the name of just throwing crap at you to keep you distracted so you'll subscribe. Redfall is the perfect analogy for Microsoft's Game Pass mantra. It's a buggy, unfinished, oftentimes borderline unplayable mess, but it's on Game Pass, so the barrier for entry is much lower than other games. It's almost as if Xbox players are okay with Redfall being complete ass because it doesn't cost them much to enjoy it.
Don't ask questions, just consume product and then get excited for next products.
But at the same time, it's because of that game model that you're getting awful experiences like Redfall to begin with. If Game Pass never existed and Redfall was to be released on PlayStation, PC, and Xbox, I guarantee you that Bethesda and Arcane would have pushed harder to make the game more polished for launch. The problem with Microsoft and its entire model is that these games and their studios don't really have to worry about being shut down or being replaced. Microsoft has so much money that they can afford 100+ Redfall failures and likely still be fine. But the problem here is that this cushiony bed of money and security is a lot like when a child is coddled like crazy by their parents. The kids who are given everything growing up usually end up having no work ethic or drive, because why would they need to try when mommy and daddy can fix all their problems for them? Why excel at anything or put your mind to something if your parents can just open their checkbook and magically make things go away? In a similar vein, that's kind of like what Microsoft has done to their gaming studios. These studios have such a cushiony parachute that can save them that they know they don't really have to deliver anything amazing. Because so what if Redfall gets mid-60s on Metacritic? Daddy Microsoft will just pay our bills regardless, and we'll just waddle our way over to our next complacent release. Just look at Arcane prior to Microsoft buying Bethesda. Dishonored and Prey are bona fide great games that needed to be great because if they weren't, the possibility of closing down was real. But now, when you're owned by one of the biggest companies in existence, you go from this to this.
That's better.
Is this what you want?
This is why Microsoft attempting to buy Activision Blizzard has been met with so much resistance. Never mind the monopoly potential this acquisition can have, you think a company like Activision Blizzard, which is already known for busted releases and tone-deaf customer service, will in any way be improved by the backing of Microsoft? What Microsoft is doing with these acquisitions of places like Bethesda and so on is proof that they have no interest in making good games for players. Their only desire is to absorb as many companies as they can and leech off of them without having to actually fix any internal problems. You can't tell me I'm wrong when Microsoft has let 343 Industries run Halo into the goddamn ground for over a decade, and even then that studio still exists and still has the exclusive rights to the Halo franchise. If 343 was independent and they delivered the exact same Halo trilogy that they just did, I promise you they would have gone under even before Infinite's release. But it's because of Microsoft's complacency when it comes to quality control that it's led to so many misfires on a consistent basis. Outside of maybe Hi-Fi Rush, what else has there been lately that's an Xbox win? Anything that was made by a studio Microsoft owns in the last 4 to 6 months that's been genuinely great, I'm all ears. Redfall being garbage at launch was always going to be the inevitable endgame because it's not looked at as a video game. It's just content that's going to be pushed into a service for people to consume for a little until they get bored. And the fact you have the head of Xbox himself, Phil Spencer, just spewing lies, it just shows you that they don't care. Phil was quoted back in November 2022 saying he delays games because he has experience when it comes to shipping games too early. Yet this is all nonsense since this same backwards mental gymnastics corporate talk happens after almost every AAA Xbox release. Oh, Halo Infinite launched and everybody hates it and we should have waited longer? Yeah, you're right, our bad, whoops. Oh, Redfall is garbage at launch? Sorry guys, our bad. And I wish I could make this up, but people have pointed out that Phil Spencer himself only played 37 minutes of Redfall and then uninstalled the game according to his own profile. I couldn't write a funnier joke to sum this all up, but there you go. You even got IGN articles being dredged up where Phil would say stuff like, Phil Spencer responds to Starfield and Redfall delay. We hear the feedback, delivering quality and consistency is expected. We will continue to work to better meet those expectations.
I can do this forever.
People are actually calling for Phil Spencer to resign since all of these misfires have been happening under his watch. He's the epitome of cushiony complacency. How can someone fail so much at their job and still be employed? Easy. Just work for Microsoft Xbox Studios and they'll never fire you. Hell, you could probably just play with your own butthole and surf the web all day and then cry when management yells that you haven't met your own quotas. Actually, let's be real, the management is probably finger popping their own buttholes too while surfing the web as well. It's like nobody cares what's going on with Microsoft's biggest studios, not even Microsoft themselves. And you have moronic statements from Phil saying things like games being on Game Pass leads to more sales. Oh really, you mean how Minecraft Legends, a game Microsoft owns, sold only 5% of its total sales on Xbox? The only platform out of the big three that actually has Game Pass on it? The same game that sold 76% of its sales on Switch and 19% on PlayStation? That game, Phil? Phil, where are you going? Phil?
Man, we have a problem, Mouse.
What problem? What are you talking
McMahon, we have a problem here. They're in the parking lot.
You stay here! You stay here with Stephanie! You take me to him! Take me to the son of a bitch! Take me to him! Where are they? God, where?
And now I want to talk about the other big acquisition that worries me to high heaven. Recently, it was reported that Microsoft thankfully has been stalled by British regulators in its acquiring of Activision Blizzard. Believe me, if you trust my opinion when it comes to these sorts of things, you do not want this to go through.
You take me to him! Take me to the son of a bitch! Take me to him!
If you think Call of Duty and all the other nonsense Activision Blizzard makes is bad now, it will get obscenely worse once Microsoft gets their hands on them. You think Call of Duty is complacent and doesn't care what its fans think about now? Imagine the same company, but now they will never go out of business and have worries of ever going under if they don't deliver. The level of laziness and quantity over quality is so nuclear, if that goes through, it'll be incredible to witness. Redfall is proof that Xbox Game Pass is garbage and a terrible precedent for modern gaming as a whole. But it's also undeniable proof, along with games like Halo Infinite and others, that when risk and consequences are removed, the ingenuity of humanity becomes lazy and, dare I say, uninspired to achieve greatness. Redfall is what happens when a developer known for taking risks is stripped of its maverick way of delivering when the pressure is on. Halo Infinite is the quintessential proof that companies as large as 343 can be mismanaged for years, and most of the leadership will still have jobs. Game Pass is a scourge on the creativity that makes video games so special to begin with, and it's proven, time and again, that Microsoft has no interest in creating actual artistic experiences. Redfall and others like it exist simply to distract its subscriber base long enough until the next billing cycle. And mark my words that Starfield will most likely be an unplayable mess when it releases this fall. If Starfield launches in any way close to Redfall in terms of quality, then I have been unfortunately proven right again when I so desperately want Microsoft and Xbox to prove me wrong. Redfall might be good enough for Game Pass, but my dear viewer, you deserve so much better than this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Hi everyone, Phil Spencer, head of Xbox. Our mission at Xbox is to bring the joy and community of gaming to everyone on the planet.